Hi, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live broadcast on the release of the ISM Services PMI Report. My name is Dan Zeiger. I'm a senior writer and editor for Inside Supply Management. That's Institute for Supply Management's member publication. And welcome to our discussion as we break down the Services PMI data for August. Activity and new orders growth picked up. A lot of people noticed that today, leading to stronger sector growth overall, which was reflected in the composite index, increasing 1.9 percentage points to 52%. But there was continued employment contraction, higher prices, and a 16-year low for backlogs as companies grappled with the impact of tariffs, which is a topic I'm sure we'll discuss in the next half hour a lot. As usual, there is a lot to talk about, so let's bring in the chair of the ISM Services Business Survey Committee, and I'm happy to say he is also a bylined author in the upcoming issue of our magazine, which we'll touch on a little bit later. His name is Steve Miller. Steve, how you doing?
And a Philadelphia Eagles fan. You forgot to mention that.
Oh, gosh. I'm a Chargers fan, which means nothing but, suffering. And so we won't discuss any. That's all the football will
discuss. It's going to be a good year. Going to be a good year for the Chargers.
Well, I mentioned last month that the August can be a tough to forecast month for services. You might not know how much vacation and experience spending tapers with school resuming. The numbers say it was a good month, but there were some caveats. I really liked a headline from our friends at Market Watch today. They said a big part of the economy grew faster in August, ISM finds, but not because everything is A-okay. So just what stood out to you, and as you give an overview of the August numbers.
Well, Dan, as usual, I've got all the numbers over here too, so you'll see me look over there occasionally. But the big thing that stood out to me was the new orders jumped by 5.7% percentage points to 56. That was a big surprise. I expected it to be pretty flat. Being summer, things were already, from a retail standpoint, already underway in July. I didn't expect to see a big jump from July to August. Kind of expected to see prices stay elevated given all the tariff activity. So that was not a surprise. But the business activity and the spike in particular on the new orders was a big surprise.
Yeah.
Wasn't surprised.
Yeah. Let's camp on there a little bit. Yeah, they were up in August. As it was fear, is it a blip? I know that was kind of the fear when we talked about the manufacturing data, and there were some other sub-index data. We talked about looking under the hood a little bit. Supplier deliveries, 50.3%. That does indicate slower deliveries, but it was down 0.7 point compared to last month. And the backlog of orders, which I know you'll talk about a lot, 40.4%. That's the lowest reading since May of 2009. I mean, those readings don't scream demand simulation or stimulation. So, how do you square that circle?
Yeah, I don't necessarily see it as a blip. There was, from last 5 months of commentary, we saw a shift from a lot of uncertainty, what's going to happen with tariffs, to starting to see tariff flow into pricing. There was plenty of commentary around folks holding off to see what things were going to happen before they took positions after an initial run to let's get some imports in place before tariffs go in. So it's possible that this month is we just have to order something. So let's get something in place, get our inventories up a little bit, and get some purchasing done ahead of these new pricing agreements go into effect. But for me, I think it's a loosening confidence based on the blend of the commentary and the numbers, confidence that there is going to be some sustained demand. They're starting to get orders to come through. Export orders are low, but otherwise looks like a very healthy situation.
Yeah. In the report, in the text, you commented, you had a quote, you said, some indication that business activity and imports are being driven by an attempt to get ahead of additional price increases while preparing for holiday peak season. Just elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. So a lot of conversation happening right now in my world around agreements for next year and getting ahead of that.
Mhm.
What we saw in the commentary for the survey respondents is prices due to tariff increases are going up, and people are companies are putting into place agreements for future purchasing, but they're also saying that we're buying ahead of those prices going into effect. So prices are being agreed to, future effective dates of contracts, and then to the extent that cash is available and people have confidence in future orders, they're increasing their inventory levels by ordering ahead. And we're seeing that both in the new orders number, I think, and in the inventory and the inventory sentiment numbers.
Yeah. Talk about the prices index a little bit. I mean, it was still pushing 70%, signaled a little relief, I guess. It was down a tad to 69.2% in August. What's your take there?
Yeah, so this one is a good one. I'd like to correct a little bit of narrative that was in the press about the manufacturing report, and it wasn't our narrative; it was narrative of other reporting, and saying, "Oh, the prices are down." Well, prices are not down; prices are still moving broadly up. How much in terms of what percentage? We don't get that type of a reading in our survey, but we do see that across our industries, we're seeing a 69 is, a majority, and a significant majority of our industries are seeing prices paid go up month over month, just a little bit slower than they saw last month. So it doesn't mean prices are coming down. It just means that those prices are continuing. And like you said at the opening, Dan, a lot of tariff flow through.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, let's just kind of take that big picture, for a little bit. You discussed, the tariff situation and contracts being renewed and, trying to, do the best timing and get it, how should purchasing managers kind of approach this coming months, as we move into this season,
Sure.
in terms of navigating everything?
Well, boy, a lot there. I would say, depending on how confident you are in future orders, it's a good time to be taking a position in inventory. We know that prices are going to continue to go up, because at least as much as we trust the survey response, which has been pretty reliable over a bunch of years. So we had the mid-year survey where our services respondents said that they were going to wait. More than half of them were going to wait 3 to 6 months before they started passing through price increases due to tariffs to their customers or attempting to push those through. We're at that point where we should be seeing that. If we haven't seen it yet, we'll be seeing it coming through soon. So if we know that we're going to have demand, or we have contracts that say we're going to have demand, to the extent that we've got cash available and no working capital issues, it's a good time for people to take positions with inventory to be able to work that out through the end of this year. It'll be interesting to see some of the port information here in the coming week or so around what kind of congestion there might be with the imports number going up so much.
Yeah, that was a number that really stood out, of course. And yeah, we can touch on that a little bit later. Let's kind of shift our focus to consumers a little bit and how they might respond. I know when the manufacturing data came out the other day, Susan Spence, the manufacturing chair, she posited that the coming months will be kind of important, for the manufacturing center to see if consumers kind of hold back on spending and maybe go into their own little austerity mode. I mean, and you had suggested that maybe what we're seeing might not be a blip in terms of demand, but yeah, just talk about that dynamic and how it relates to the services sector, and how does holiday peak season kind of fit into that equation as well?
Yeah. So Dan, what we're seeing in our overall PMI is we're up over last year. So we're average. The last 12 months is higher than the prior 12 months. So we're at about a 52.4 average for the last 12 months. Prior 12 months is 51.7. So we're seeing a gradual improvement in services, which is a good thing, which leads to my conclusion that the bottom isn't falling out, especially with the order history really over the last several months, new orders. Something that I just because it was curious on how low the backlog dropped, was just saying, okay, so how does this compare historically in our PMI numbers? And it's very interesting that when we see weak new orders, about 5 months later, we see dropping of the order backlog. And so to me, the numbers that we're seeing in fairly weak new orders, historically speaking, but still in expansion territory, we're seeing historically low back order, and showing that from a productivity standpoint, we're able to work through things and keep up with customer demand. So that has kind of a double-edged sword to it. One is we're seeing the employment numbers stay weak. You don't have to hire new people if your backlog is manageable and you're able to meet customer expectations. But I think it also means that if we see a significant spike, we're going to see those delivery numbers be a higher number, slower deliveries, even more so than what we see today.
Yeah, we're getting to the halfway point of our time here. I'll just remind our viewers, I mean, if you have a question that you'd like to ask Steve, just drop it into the comments, and our good folks behind the scenes will drop it into the feed here so Steve and I can see it, and we'll try to get around to it if we have time. Just wanted to drop a reminder on that. But you did touch on unemployment today. The ADP private payrolls report came out. I believe the number was 54,000, which wasn't great. And we'll have the big federal jobs data tomorrow. And there's been a lot of drama over that, if you've been paying attention to the news in the last couple of months. But the employment index was stuck in place in August. It was up just 1/10 of a percentage point to 46.5. Among the companies that were surveyed, 10.3% reported increasing staff. That was down from 12.3% in July. No surprises really, but just kind of go into a little deeper dive on what the employment data told us.
Yeah, I think it's very closely related to your question around peak and starting to go into peak retail. Historically, in this July, August, September timeframe, we see a new orders number. I believe it's around 56 for the last couple of years. We're around 53 right now for the average over the last 2 months. Now we'll see in one of the years, a big jump, I think it was in the September number, is what made the average 56. It was around 53 before a 59 came in the September timeframe. So part of what might be influencing those numbers is we're just not seeing as high a demand as normally would be expecting during this season. There was some hiring that was done looking at the ADP numbers in construction and in retail, in accommodations. And so it'd be interesting to see next month how that flows through in September activity, or whether we see some retrenching from that perspective. But I think from a historical standpoint, if you look at these 3 months of last 2 months of new orders compared to this time period, this July through September time period, we're a bit weaker, although we're still in expansionary territory. And I think that's impacting the employment numbers when you look at the new orders versus the backlog and need to keep up. We just don't have enough demand to drive that employment. We're also, though, in the comments, we're not seeing people talking about massive layoffs, reduction in force, and that type of thing that came through in some of the commentary for manufacturing. We're seeing slow to backfill, not replacing, attrition, things like that for those that are actually contracting. In information as well as utilities, we're seeing some strong hiring, though.
Yeah.
I'll say, sorry, some strong hiring pressure, but some difficulty in finding the right talent for specific jobs.
Yeah, that has been a problem for the services sector for as long as I've been following it. And, you see those comments so often, just we're having trouble finding qualified people, or at least people that can do what we need done. So yeah, that tradition certainly continues. Well, you had touched on imports, and yeah, that was the biggest gainer. The bullet point of the week, I guess, as Casey Kasem used to say about the Billboard charts, that went up 8.7 percentage points compared to July. It was 45.9% in July, and increased up to 54.6% in August. And imports is another one of those indexes where probably it's more tangible for people on the manufacturing sector than maybe services. Not really sure what kind of services are imported, but yeah, talk about that a little bit. And yeah, especially in the context of the big increase that we saw in August.
Sure. Yeah. So for equipment, for utilities and in agriculture, a lot of agricultural products coming from Canada, Mexico, and overseas, and then certainly building materials for construction. A lot of importing happening for wood products, steel, aluminum, that type of thing. For me, I'm attributing two pieces to that. Some strong new order numbers are indicating that there's a need to bring that inventory in, and then the anticipated pricing pressure that'll flow through to finished product in the near term. Than what we've seen historically. The prices, the comments on tariff impacts actually impacting pricing came through for 12 of the 18 industries. So we're seeing really significant expectation there of continued tariff impacts for imported goods. The positive side is that goods in services provisioning is not the dominant cost. Labor is the dominant cost in services. So that inflationary kind of pressure related to tariffs shouldn't impact final pricing of services like it would in manufacturing.
Yeah. Your comment about, inventories and imports, how it related, it just prompted me to look at those two indexes. And, you have talked about a lot about inventories and inventory sentiment and how they kind of work in tandem. So let's bring that up. I mean, yeah, there's not a lot of stock depletion or, concerns based on what we're seeing in the index. The inventories index was up to 53.2% in August. That's a 1.4 percentage point increase. And inventory sentiment, which, how basically asking companies how they feel about their stock levels, that also went up 2.3% to 55.5%. So just talk about that situation. Doesn't seem to be a lot of, I don't want to say worries, but, pressing matters there, I guess.
Yeah. So in the commentary, I didn't get an answer to the question that I'm going to pose. The question that I'll pose there is we need to understand, is it because we have the wrong inventory and we're bringing in additional inventory? Or is it we have more than we typically have, but we're bringing in more for two reasons: one, demand, and the other, to avoid cost increases. Based on where all the numbers fall in terms of business activity, new orders, as well as imports, it seems to me that we're getting positioned for supporting demand, not that it's we have the wrong products and we're bringing in others from an inventory standpoint. We already believed, we were already above, was it 53 for inventory sentiment? Yeah, 53.2. In July, and we still went to increase imports significantly and increase inventory. So to me, there's some confidence there, because you wouldn't do that if you were uncertain about demand. You'd probably ride it out a little bit longer. That's at least my conclusion with what data that we have.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, as it relates to demand, that's another good sign that, it may not be more than a blip, as you said. Hey, we talk about industries from time to time, and I know we spoke about it a lot when I interviewed you for the story that's upcoming in our magazine. And one that stood out again was real estate rental and leasing. That's the 7th straight month in expansion, I believe. And I know we talked about it a little bit when we spoke for the magazine story, but we can, elaborate on it a little bit more. I mean, it's just a pleasant surprise given the headwinds, that we've discussed a lot. Tariffs and, how they relate to construction materials and interest rates and whatnot. And I'll share a comment. We've certainly shared a lot of respondent comments that have been, biting, so to speak, on tariffs in recent months. But here's one from Real Estate Rental and Leasing. He or she says, our company had the strongest quarter in its history since it became a public company in 2020. Revenue was up due to merger and acquisition activity, and in spite of a slow housing market and increasing tariffs. I mean, from our survey respondents, in terms of tariffs, that's about as close as an equal time comment as you're going to get. Just talk about, real estate rental and leasing. I mean, it's still doing well, obviously.
Yeah. And I've got to believe that our continued expansion in utilities is a significant contributor there. As rental, rental is not only, car rental and that type of activity, but equipment rental, heavy equipment rental, that type of thing, as well as real estate will be driven by the additional commitments that are being made on turning up utilities to support, whether it's crypto or whether it's AI. We're seeing significant, really, really significant investments going in there. So I believe that that's what's really driving that behavior and that activity, because construction, we're 5 months in a row in contraction. They're going to throw a bunch of stuff at you here, Dan.
Sure.
One of the things that was fascinating to me was just how negative the comments were that came through from the manufacturing survey, because the numbers are basically the same place they were last year, other than prices.
Yeah.
The business activity, new order activity, employment are all pretty much, well, if you look plus or minus a couple months from where we are today, are very similar to where we were last year when tariffs weren't even being talked about, really. So it's really very interesting to me to see kind of sentiment leads into business activity. So with that negative sentiment, whether that's going to significantly impact us in that regard.
Yeah. Very mild contraction continues in the manufacturing sector. Just, it just seems to camp from 47 to 49 going on 2+ years now. Yeah. I had mentioned that story that I talked to Steve about for the magazine. Just wanted to make that announcement. Steve's insights are all over the September-October issue of Inside Supply Management. I'm really excited about it. First, he and some other smart people talked to me for a story on the ISM PMI reports and why they are valuable indicators and how you can use them in your business. And he also co-wrote a feature article on how synergy between a company's chief supply chain officer and its CFO can go a long way in achieving operational and financial goals. So it's some great content that I think you'll enjoy and find valuable, and it'll be out in a couple of weeks at ismworld.org/magazine. And those of you who get the paper copy, that'll be in your mailboxes shortly as well. Before we wrap up, we're getting to that time. I usually ask you this question. If I'm a CEO or I'm an executive, what are some of the key things that, I should know about the August data?
One of the from a risk management perspective, pieces of advice that I give is you never want to be last in line. You don't want to be in the middle of the pack when supply is constrained. You want to take your position early, because if you don't, you'll run out. And that'll either mean you're paying exorbitant prices or you're waiting too long. I think we're at that point. We talked about this a little bit last month, but what we're seeing in the activity with the increase in imports, and we're seeing the new orders, because that's not just for services industries, but it's between. So you have wholesalers and you have retailers. They're both in the services industries. Retailers and construction are placing demand on wholesalers, as well as a bunch of others. So as we start to see this business activity through new orders, the business activity number and the imports number go up, I think it says to CEOs, if you have the cash flow If you have the position within your working capital to enable you to increase inventory for fairly confident demand, you should be authorizing your operations teams to take those positions, because we saw such a drop off earlier in the year, that you don't want to be subject or a victim of your supplier's inability to ramp up fast enough to be able to support you. So that would be my primary one. Maybe also strategic hires, because the market, despite the weak employment numbers, the job market is really tight. The unemployment rate is still very low. And when we start picking up, which I anticipate we will with a couple of rate cuts, you don't want to not have those people in place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, hey, Steve, this has been great. I mean, yeah, I really learned a lot. It'll be an interesting next couple of months for the services sector for sure. I mean, is there anything that we haven't talked about or that I haven't asked that you think might be important to include this month? Yeah, it's a rare month where I don't have a question about the Fed and interest rates for you, but if you want to camp on that for a little while, or anything else that that we haven't talked about.
Yeah, just in an environment where commentary seems to be generally negative.
Yeah,
we are seeing some modest strength in the services industries, and I think that's important to hold on to and be prepared, because if things start to move faster, you want to be ready for it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Steve. And we'll enjoy that celebration of the services sector tonight in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, when 80,000 people cram into a stadium to be entertained.
Go Birds.
Happy football season to all who celebrate. And we'll be back here in a month's time to break down the Services PMI data for September. So thanks for joining us today. And for more information, feel free to go to ismworld.org, where in a little bit you can read our roundup article that details a lot of what Steve and I have discussed here. And if you want to be a part of the ISM Manufacturing or Services Business Survey panels that help compile data for the ISM PMI reports, visit ismworld.org/join the panel for more information. As I said, we'll see you back here next month when we tackle the ISM PMI reports data for September. Maybe we'll have some fall decor or football decor in the background. We'll see. For Steve Miller and some people behind the digital curtain who helped us today, they are Christina Cahill and Jennifer Stevens. My name is Dan Zeiger. We'll see you next time.